Did Harrison Ford's character survive the events of Episode 3 of 1923? We're going to talk about it right now on the Sundowners Club. Welcome. I'm your host, Sean. To my right, my co-host, Sterling. What's up, man?
Not much. How are you?
I'm good. So we came off of last week's Episode 3 of 1923, which I felt like was one of the best episodes of episodic TV in any streaming format I've seen. I put it up there with House of the Dragon. I really liked this show, and I liked the fluidness of the story and the urgency of what the characters are facing right out of the gate, the first few episodes. And we knew that coming off of Episode 3 with the attack and the ambush, we were going to deal with the aftermath of that in this episode, who lived, who died. And so, we get right into that as the show starts, right? We see Cara, played by Helen Mirren, in the kitchen where they drug, in the previous episode at the end, Jacob's body to try to see if they could save him. There's blood all in the kitchen, and she's cleaning up. So you see the aftermath of this ambush and the havoc that it's wreaked on this family. And you wonder right away, because they don't tell you right out of the gate, is Harrison Ford's character dead? They kind of make you think maybe he is, because it's a somber music kind of playing in the background, and she's cleaning up the blood, and you can't tell on her face. So I feel like they hid that pretty well. But and we see Zane show up, and he's had a minor presence in the first few episodes. We know that aside from John Dutton Sr. and Jack, he's one of the main hands for the Dutton Ranch. That works for Harrison Ford's character. So Zane shows up, and he's talking about calling the sheriff again, and Cara says no, and because that was Jacob's wishes, and basically explains to him that if people know what happened here, they're all going to come, and so they're trying to keep it under wraps. We know that right away, that they're trying to keep this thing quiet so that the Yellowstone won't be under siege any more than it already is. And then he asks how Jacob's doing, Harrison Ford's character, and she says he made it through the night, so that's something. So we know at that point, Harrison Ford's character, we haven't seen him yet, but he's alive.
Right.
And so then, she goes in and she checks on Jack and Elizabeth. Elizabeth has been wounded, so she's laying in bed, and young Jack is by her side. They both have survived. But Cara's checking in on them, and so we see that the mother of Elizabeth show up, in essence, to retrieve her husband's body. We found out from the prior episode that Elizabeth, her father Bob, has died. Mm-hmm. He's the first one that got shot off his horse. He died along with John Dutton Sr., and so she's retrieving the body, but she's also trying to bring her daughter Liz with her to leave the Yellowstone and move back east. And she says she's staying. And then there's a great scene, Helen Mirren, where the Liz's mother slaps Jack when Jack basically says, I'm not marrying you, I'm marrying her. And then Helen Mirren turns around and slaps her and says, I'm the only one that disciplines my children. So Helen Mirren, you see right out of the gate, they're setting her character up to be a vicious defender of the Yellowstone. And what was your thoughts on the first few minutes of the episode? We knew there was going to be a little bit of a lull in the aftermath of the cliffhanger of Episode 3, but How did you feel about the beginning of this episode and how it started out and showing kind of who lived and who died and what they were facing?
Yeah, I think it was basically just kind of setting things up to come. It felt like a setup episode for the rest of the season. There wasn't really a whole lot of major events that happened. I mean, they were dealing with the aftermath, and you can tell that the best is yet to come in the show, and I'm really excited about it for what's coming.
Well, you also see that I don't think she was planning on it, and certainly is terrified of the prospect. But you also see that Cara is forced into a leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
Helen Mirren's character is like, look, everybody's wounded, and Spencer's on the other side of the world, and Jack can barely get up and walk around. So she had to take a leadership position, but she's kind of meant for it in terms of how she handles things. And so you see that wisdom when we find out that Banner Creighton and his crew, or what's left of them, they take a large mass of the cattle herd of cattle, and they steal them from the Yellowstone, from the Dutton Ranch.
And murder some of her hands.
Right, yeah, they did. And then you see Zane and Jack want to go after them, and Cara says, "Hold on," and then she goes in and sees Harrison Ford's character, and says, well, what do we do? And he tells her, let it go. You got to let that go for now. That's a battle that we don't need to fight right now. And so then she comes out, and they listen to her. She basically realizes that she's got to go in town and somewhat keep it under wraps by saying that Jacob is off, dealing with thieves out of state, and hope that the Cattle Association and the council buy into that, right, and don't suspect that something else has gone on. And so, we see her taking that leadership role, and we see that Harrison Ford's injuries, while he wakes up, he's weak, and you don't get a sense that he's really out of the woods yet. He's wounded, he's old, and so
he might make it,
and he might be alive, but never in any condition again to fight or defend the ranch. And he tells her, look, get Spencer home, and you have what you need. Basically, telling her that she can lead, she can do this, and so I thought that was a good scene. And then we see for the first time, Banner Creighton. We knew he was smart, but you start to see the strategy at play where he's like, look, we don't have men to fight this battle, and he realizes, wait a minute, I can go rent an army. I just got to find a way to do that. And so we see him go to visit a business tycoon played by Timothy Dalton, a character named Donald Whitfield. And in essence, Banner's, very bold. He goes in and says, look, Jacob Dutton's dead. And Timothy Dalton's character's like, you saw the body. He questions whether he's dead, but he says, okay, let's say he is. You don't have anything to bargain for. He said, what do you need from me? And he tells him, I need men. I need an army. Yep. And so he says, well, okay, why would I do that? And he says, well, I'm going to take the Yellowstone and I'll herd the land and work the land, but you have the mineral rights. You have the rights for the mining.
Right.
And that is a precious commodity. So he basically says, you have your army. And then I thought Timothy Dalton's a great actor. He's been in, he's played James Bond before. He's been in a lot of great.
He plays a vicious character in this, though.
Yeah, he basically tells him one warning, if you fail me, you screw me over, I not only will kill you, but I will kill your whole family. I think he talked about
his wife, and
he talked about skinning him alive, right?
Bury his kids in her skin or something. He's a vicious character,
and that's like the first scene. So already, man, there's going to be a major showdown between Timothy Dalton and Spencer and Jacob. So that it brings in this other character that is much stronger than Banner. Banner has intelligence, he's got toughness, but now he has real power behind him.
Right.
And so they're a formidable group, and now he gets his army. And so, we see Cara show up at the Livestock Association, and she basically, says, this is what we're doing. And, he's out of state, so I'm here in his stead. She basically says, we need to create a police commission to hold these thieves accountable, and talked about thieves and murderers. And initially she gets pushback, but then she has a document saying it was signed by Jacob, and the sheriff ends up, played by Robert Patrick, ends up saying, yeah, that's his signature, and we know that she forged it. And but that was her on the fly. She's figuring out how to maneuver. And then there's probably the best scene, one of the two best scenes of the episode. She's walking out, and Banner Creighton, who attacked her family, says, you're a liar, and starts calling her out. And she turns around, spits on him, and says, unlike the men, when I kill you, I'm going to kill you slowly. And then she says, you haven't met my nephew yet. And he turns around and says, I have, thinking she's talking about Jack. And I wasn't impressed or whatever. And she says, not that nephew.
Yeah.
And so they are laying the table for Spencer to show up and wreak absolute havoc.
Yeah, they're really relying on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a great scene. Helen Mirren and Jerome Flynn, two great actors. That may have been the first scene that they had together.
I
I'm not.
think it was.
It may have been
Oh,
for the series, but hopefully there's more to come with that. And so basically, she buys herself time. They're supposed to be meeting every like 2 weeks, and she says, we'll convene again in a month. So that's important for the end of the episode because we know that she's delaying people knowing about Jacob being injured and John Sr. being dead by saying we're going to meet in a month. And so that plays into what we're going to talk about at the end. But in the meantime, we have this other side story that hasn't totally tied into the Duttons yet. But we have Teonna back at the Catholic school, the boarding school, and we have another death. So Teonna, who is if these nuns have not figured out yet, they are not breaking her. There's no way they're breaking her. No. And so she's out in the field and they're picking berries and there's thorns on them. And one of the girls keeps getting cut and she gets hit and Teonna defends her and then gets hit in the head with a shovel. And by the sister that Sister Mary and gets wounded, and when she comes to, she basically fakes that she wants to be saved. Yes, because she knows they're gonna beat her to death.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of brutal to watch them cut her hair because that's something with the Native American culture that is.
Well, they were scrubbing her back, and she had all those scars on it. It was just
they scrubbed her back with a metal, like a Brillo pad.
Oh yeah.
So they were literally tearing the skin off of her back. Yeah. It's brutal. And then cutting her hair, which is, anything about Native American culture, that is the most humiliating, disrespectful thing that can be done to somebody of the Native American culture. So you see that happen, but she's buying time. And so she survives that moment. She wakes up and in the middle of the night and she's like, I'm leaving. And she's taking all the Bibles from the different beds of the girls.
Putting them in a pillowcase.
Which we've seen that before, right? So, she puts the mini Bibles in a pillowcase, and then she goes to Sister Mary and kills her. She
beats her to death. Yep.
Beats her to death. But when she does so, she sticks a cloth in her mouth.
Suffocates her,
and she speaks to her in her native language, her native tongue.
Yeah.
And basically saying, I'm not the land is killing you, and I am the land. I thought that was a great scene. And so Teonna then runs out into the night, and we know that that's not over, because the priest, the father's going to come after her, and so we know that story. How that's going
to tie in.
Yeah, how it's going to tie into the Duttons. I'm assuming that because Father Renault is powerful in his own right. Will he tie in with Timothy Dalton's character? I'm not really sure. But so there's going to be some alliances being made. I would assume that the Duttons will, in some way, shape, or fashion, maybe have some sort of alliance with the Native American tribes or some of them to help. I'm not really sure, but that would be my thought, is that we're laying the groundwork for the story to tie into the larger story. And then we finally cut back to Spencer and Alex, and they are now on a beach in Zanzibar, and everything seems great. She's waking up, they're, making love on the beach, and, he's in the water, and he seems
just having a honeymoon.
Yeah, it's a honeymoon. Yeah. Absolutely. And, he seems like he's finding some peace, and she finds his letters.
Yeah.
And finally convinces him, Aunt Cara has written these letters to him, and he never opened them. And for those that have had military fathers, grandfathers, uncles, brothers, children in their family that have served in war, and I have, that really hit home with me when he talked about, I didn't read these letters because, I felt like it would weaken me, my ability to survive and make it home or survive the war. And so, that's something that I've heard you'll hear from military war veterans about trying to lock into where they are. And if you get too caught up in the photos of family and letters, for some people it can give them strength, and for others it can distract them somewhat. And so for Spencer, he felt like he had to put that away and he tells her that's why he didn't read them, so that he could survive. And then she starts reading the letters to him, and what was cool about it, I don't know what your thought was on the way everything ended. I had not thought about the time difference between Spencer and Alex on the beach.
They don't ever explain that, and then you get an idea of that it's they finally get to the last letter
where she writes saying that they're in trouble, they've been attacked.
And it was sent 3 months ago. So
which is, it's going to be interesting because we know that Cara had delayed the Cattle Association meetings for a month, but not 3. And so
2 months where
yeah,
she's in a lot of trouble. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting how they set that up. I thought it was kind of like I guess they're taking a 3-week break.
Yeah, they're off for a few weeks and then they're back for the second half of the season. And we did see clips. You can find online. There are clips of the second half of the season, and we see Harrison Ford sitting in a chair outside. So we know he survives for the time being, but he's weakened. We see clips of Spencer and Alex trying to get passage back to the Americas, and they're on a small boat, and he's shooting a shark. Spencer's killed just about everything so far in the first 4 episodes. And so, we know that he's trying to make it back, and by any means necessary in the quickest amount of time. He knows that time is of the essence. It's urgent. So the other thing we didn't mention was, and they haven't, it's weird, they haven't spent too much time on it, and it's not a major gripe, but a little bit of one, is that Emma, her character, is going to dig the grave for John Dutton Sr., and we see the other cowboys.
Did you see the gravestones of the family
Margaret
from 1883?
and James.
Elsa.
Yep.
Yeah, they showed the whole family from 1883.
So we had James, Margaret, Tim McGraw's character, Faith Hill, and then the girl that plays Elsa right there. And they buried John Dutton Sr. next to him. But the cowboys help her, but it's only like a minute or two scene. And so I'm wondering how much more are we going to see of Emma? And I like the fact that we could see more of her character. She's now a widow. What role is she going to play in this story? Or is she going to take, she's going to take a back seat to the other characters? I'm not really sure, but they didn't spend a whole lot of time the first 4 episodes on John Dutton Sr. or Emma.
No.
So
they just killed them off in episode 3, and that was the end.
Yeah, and it's almost like you see her on a cart with the bodies, and all this activity's happening around her, and you almost feel like, okay, here's the actress. She's like, I don't really have any scenes.
Right.
I'm just here. So I'm not really sure where they're going to go with Emma. It'd be interesting to see her play some sort of important role at some point, because she's kind of been in the background. But, final thoughts of the first half of this season, now that we have a few weeks before it comes back. How do you feel about the first 4 episodes? Ranking it, in terms of what else you've seen out there? And
I really like it. I think it's so far I'd give it probably an 8.5. I like it. I think it's I just finished 1883, and like that, it's starting out real strong. 1883 kind of dipped in the middle and then finished strong. So I'm hoping it stays good the whole time. I'm curious how much time they're going to spend on his journey back.
Right.
If that's going to be like an entire, if he's
it
in a
seems
boat
like
fighting sharks and then he gets there at the end of the season, or if it's, he's there. And so I'm curious how they're going to do that.
They didn't make it look like it's going to be an easy journey.
Yeah.
Which makes you think that this is not going to be one episode and he's back. I think my prediction is Spencer makes it back to the Yellowstone by the last episode.
Yeah, they could do that and then just show how dire things are at the ranch and how bad things have gotten, and then spend the second season showing him.
One thing that I like about this compared to 1883 and even Yellowstone is there are really no weak characters. I mean, you've got Spencer and Alex, great chemistry between those two. You've got Jacob, Harrison Ford, and Helen Mirren, Jerome Flynn, Banner Creighton.
You've got some characters that kind of feel irrelevant, though.
So far, what's Zane's role going to be? What's the sheriff played by Robert Patrick's role going to be?
Well, just that John Dutton was just
right,
barely.
But there are a lot of good characters, and you bring in Timothy Dalton, and his first scene was as good as anybody's. I mean, he was really scary, in terms of like the evil that
he's a good
he
villain.
portrayed, as a villain. So, I really liked it. We know that now that House of the Dragon won the Golden Globe for Best Drama Series. I think it was the best show in streaming the last couple of years. I put 1923 right behind it. I really enjoyed this series. I want to see more of it to kind of see after one season so I could really compare it. But the first
It's only
4
2
episodes,
seasons, right? I think.
they're saying 2 seasons, right? And so I know there's been thoughts out there that Harrison Ford's going to play both seasons. There's nothing out there that confirms that he is definitely going to be in both seasons. They'll keep that under wraps because they don't want to spoil ultimately what happens with the
Yeah,
character.
because when we were curious if he died, and there were people in the comment section saying he signed on for 2 seasons, but I don't.
Well, he could have an option for
Right.
season 2. They haven't written it yet. I think they know the main beats of the story, but hasn't been written yet. So, and he's a big actor with with commitments, and so I think they're going to want to keep that under wraps so that they keep the story, from being leaked out. But really liked it. I highly recommend it. We're going to be here to cover it. If you like what you heard today, leave us a comment below, hit the like button, and most importantly, hit subscribe so that we can grow the channel and TCB.